Like any 2D platformer, jumping plays a pretty important part in Donkey Kong Country 2. In pretty much every level, you're going to be jumping in some way or another. So naturally, it begs the question, is there any level you can beat without jumping? It seems impossible, right? Even the game's first level, which is arguably the easiest in the game, still has ledges and gaps you need to jump over. And it only gets harder from there. So, even though the odds were stacked against me, I wanted to try. I wanted to see how many levels in DKC 2 you can beat without jumping. So, there's only one rule for this run. If I press the B button under any circumstance, it counts as a jump. If I'm on the ground, on a hook, or in a roller coaster cart, if I press the B button, it's a jump. Now with that being said, let's hop into the game's first level, Pirate Panic. So the first level starts off pretty easy. We get ditzy, then we start rolling through a bunch of enemies. We then come across our first obstacle, this lower area in the deck with 2 enemies. I then take advantage of a mechanic I'll call damage jumping. If the Kong under the player's control takes damage, the Kong in the back will perform a jump. You don't have to press the A button for this to happen, this just happens automatically. And I take full advantage of it here, jumping up the ledge and getting Diddy back right after. We then quickly come across our next obstacle, this gap. And then I show off another mechanic that might make this run possible, the throw. By pressing the A button, the player can pick up the Kong in the back, and then with another press can throw them across gaps, teleporting the Kong under the player's control to that position. I actually try to do it here and fail, but luckily I can fall down and take this bonus barrel, and complete it with a couple of well-placed throws. We then roll through some more enemies, throw Diddy up on this ledge, and then another ledge, and come to this target pad, which has to be jumped on to end the level. And unfortunately, it won't trigger with a throw. Thankfully, we can get on top of this barrel, roll off, and trigger the target pad, ending the level, all without a single jump. Main brace mayhem at first seems to be a problem. We can get up on this ledge with a damage jump, but as soon as we come to the rope, we have to jump on it to progress. However, if we use the same damage jump as earlier, we can float down with Ditzy and reach the warp barrel, warping us to the end of the stage. We can then fall down and trigger the target pad, ending another stage without a single jump. Unfortunately, Gameplank Galley is where our streak comes to an end. We can make it through most of the level without jumping, but this large pit stops us in our tracks. It's too far for a throw, and you can't damage jump over it. And even the warp barrel requires a jump to get to, so this one is a bust. Lockjaw's Locker is next, and thankfully, this level goes a bit better. We can use this clomp to damage jump up on this ledge, and we can use another clomp to float across this gap with Ditzy. And from here on out, the rest of the level is basically just swimming. And I know I said any press of the B button counts as a jump, but I'm not counting swimming as jumping. It's the same button, but it's clearly a different action. Anyways, we make it to the end of the level, throw Ditzy in this barrel, and activate the target. Another level with no jumps. In Topsail Trouble, we can damage jump off this mouse and float to the warp barrel. Unfortunately, it drops us right down on this rope, forcing us to jump one time to finish the level. The boss of this world is frustrating. You're supposed to hit him with these eggs to damage him. The first 2 times he'll fly at you, so you can hit him with the egg without jumping. But after that, he'll stay in the air, so no matter what, you have to jump to hit him. If you're holding on to the egg, he will not come down to attack no matter what. As soon as you drop the egg though, he will. But that doesn't help us out because we can't hurt him without the egg. You also can't throw the egg up to hit him. And it's just barely not tall enough to hit him well in Ditzy's hair. So unfortunately, we can't beat him without jumping. Hothead Hop is almost doable. We can make a throw to get up on this ledge, but unfortunately the warp barrel is just out of our throw range. We have to jump and throw Diddy in order to reach it. And the proper way to complete the level isn't much better. For some reason, throws go right through these crocodiles, and you can't get far enough with a damage jump off this mouse. You also can't use this clobber because they don't damage you, they just push you around. So unfortunately, we have to jump once to complete it. Cannon's claims seem totally doable. We can throw Ditsy in this barrel and get up on this ledge. Then, with a well-timed throw, we can dodge this barrel and kill the cannon. We then throw into another barrel and then damage jump off this mouse and float into the warp barrel. But unfortunately, we have no way to trigger the target pad without jumping. We get close by jumping off this bird, but not close enough. And the second bird doesn't fly low enough to damage jump off of it. So unfortunately, we have to use one jump to beat this level. In Lava Lagoon, we can get up on these bosses with a couple of throws. We then come across this seal, who we're supposed to hit to turn the lava into water. But we can't go in the water because if we go in, we have to jump out. So I try to cross the gap by throwing. Unfortunately, every time I throw, I hit the seal, which causes me to go nowhere. However, if I throw again while he's still doing his animation, Diddy will pass right through, allowing me access to the platform. As long as I kill the Claptrap with a well-placed throw before I do this, everything is good. But again, the warp barrel is just out of reach of our throw, and we have to use one jump to get to it. And the level can't be completed the normal way because, like I said earlier, once you jump in the water, you have to jump out of it. Red Hot Ride, you need 3 jumps to complete. You can't throw cons on balloons, so you have to jump on them. And in both sections here, you can't use the enemies to damage jump. So we need 2 jumps for both these balloons, then a third to reach the warp barrel, making another level we can't beat without jumping. In Squat Shaft, we can use a throw to get up on this platform, damage jump using this clomp, and then float down to the warp barrel. And with a well-placed barrel shot, we can trigger the pad, beating the level with no jumps. Now, I tried for a while beating this boss without jumping, but it's not possible. You can dodge the fireballs with the use of a throw in this ledge and hit him once, but that's where it ends. The game then wants you to jump on these huts to get to the other side of the arena. But we can't do that. And if you stay here, he'll just keep attacking you and the cannonball will never drop, making this impossible without jumping. And with World 2 now over, our ability to use warp barrels is now finished, since warp barrels only appear in the first 10 levels of the game. So from here on out, every level is going to have to be beaten the hard way. And that's exactly what we do in Barrel Bayou. Really, nothing special happens in this level though. We basically just use the throw to clear every obstacle. There are some tricky sections like this part with 2 bees or dealing with these clobbers, but both can be overcome with the throw. At the end, there's a cannon barrel, so you don't have to jump to trigger the pad. It wasn't easy, but it can definitely be completed without jumping. Glimmer's Galleon takes place completely underwater, so we couldn't even jump if we tried. At the end of the level, you're shot onto this platform by a cannon barrel. We can then use the same trick we used in Pirate Panic and roll off the barrel to trigger the target, completing the level with 0 jumps and raising our total levels completed up to 6. Crockhead Clamber is not possible. You can damage jump onto this cattail, but the problem is you have to jump off it to progress. And since we can no longer use warp barrels, there's no other way around this. So it's a bust. Rattle Battle is another impossible level. You're forced to use Rattly in this level, and right off the bat, there's a huge jump you have to make, ending the level basically before it started. Now, there's a bit of a loophole to this level. You can beat it by using Rattly's super jump, which is done by pressing A. So under my rules, it technically wouldn't be counted as a jump, but it felt against the spirit of this challenge, so I didn't allow it. In Slime Climb, it's possible to make your way over to this rope section, but as soon as you do, it's over. There's no other way up, and if you try throwing the cons on it, they won't grab on. So unfortunately, you have to jump. Bramble Blast can basically be completed like a casual playthrough. The only parts that are different are having to throw Diddy in this barrel at the start, and this middle section where you have to kill a Claptrap with a throw, spin down to this barrel, and use a well-placed throw to get to this one. You can even bounce off these dragonflies at the end, so you don't have to jump to trigger the pad. So no jumps for Bramble Blast, raising our total up to 7. So I was 100% sure this boss was not going to be beatable without jumping. The gimmick of this fight, after all, is jumping every time he lands to avoid being stunned. So I thought we would just be stunned all the time and just die to his attacks. But it turns out I was wrong. You can stay on the ground, get stunned, and you still have enough time to dodge his attacks. After the second time you hit him, the timing does get a bit tight. As you can see here, I repeatedly get stunned and hit by his club. But by running a bit before I rolled, I was able to get enough distance to avoid the attack. After that, he starts doing these mini jumps. But as long as you roll the second you're unstunned, you should be able to avoid them and beat the boss. All without using a single jump, bringing our total to 8. We now head to World 4, Crazy Kremland. And Kremland is kind of a bitch. No level in this world is doable without jumping. Hornet Hole, you're stuck as soon as the level begins because of this honey. It's too far to throw across, and there's no enemies to damage jump with. And as soon as you walk in it, the only way out is jumping. You can't roll, you can't throw, you can only jump. Target terror is more of the same. We can throw Diddy in this barrel and get to the cart, but we're unable to jump over this bee, so we lose Ditsy. Then we're required to jump and hit this barrel to open the gate. But we can't do that, so we just hit the gate and die. In Bramble Scramble, with a well-timed throw, we can kill this hook guy. And then we can make it across the gap with another throw. With a throw and a damage jump off these vines, we can float over to this vertical vine and avoid the horizontal one below. But that's where this level ends. We have to jump to get off the vine. We can't avoid it. Rickety Race is another coaster level. And as soon as it starts, we have a gap that we cannot clear. In Mudhole Marsh, we can get across these barrels with a couple of throws. But then we come to a huge gap with a bunch of hoods and we're stuck. Even if you could float the gap with Ditsy, the hoods get in the way with their massive hitboxes. And once you're on a hook, the only way off is jumping, thus ending the level right there. In Ramby Rumble, we can kill this guy with a well-timed throw. But once again, the honey stops us before we can even get started. Like I said, all 6 levels in this world cannot be completed without jumping. Luckily, the boss is different. Since you play squats in this boss fight, you couldn't even jump if you wanted to. So it basically plays out like a casual playthrough would. And we kill the bee without much trouble, which brings our total to 9. And we move on to World 5, Gloomy Gulch. And at this point in the run, I was getting worried that jumpless levels were behind us. We were getting pretty far in the game, and it seemed the levels were just getting too complex to complete without jumping. And Ghostly Grove did nothing to quell my fears. You can roll through the beginning of the level, but as soon as you reach this cliff face, you're stuck. It's too high for a throw, and while you can damage jump onto this ghost rope, like all of the ropes in the game, the only way off is jumping. And then we have Haunted Hall, which is a 3rd coaster level. But this time, we don't even get to the coaster. The gap is too far to throw, and there's no enemies to damage jump with. So we just can't get across. In Gusty Glade, using throws to get up on ledges and kill enemies, we were able to make it a quarter way through the level. Then we hit this gap, which again was too wide to throw, and with no enemies around, we couldn't damage jump over it. You're supposed to jump when the wind is blowing to the right so you can float over the gap, but since we can't do that, this level is a bust. So, even though Gloomy Gulch had been kind of a nightmare so far, Parachute Panic seemed really promising. Even though it was a level with a lot of honey, most of it was played with Quats the Parrot, so I thought it gave us a good chance. So right off the bat, we fall down and avoid the honey. With a well-placed throw, we were able to completely avoid it and jump on the parrot. We slowly descend and are able to avoid the honey at the bottom. We then hop on another parrot and head on down. With another throw, we're barely able to clear the honey and jump down. Then we come to this area with honey and 2 claptraps. And by killing the first one and damage jumping off the second one, we're able to reach the parrot. After a bunch more falling, we were able to make it to the halfway point of the level. And with the way things were going lately, it seemed like a miracle. And after falling some more, we came to this part, where we have to jump on the parrot. And unfortunately, throwing doesn't work. So I said fuck it and just jumped down, which somehow worked. We then found a new parrot and got Ditzy back and continued our descent. And a little ways down, we get hit and lose Diddy. And at this point, my hands started to sweat. Aside from the boss fight against the bee, it had been 10 levels since we completed a level without jumping. So I really wanted this. I wanted to prove I could beat one of these harder levels without jumping. And as we continued on, it seemed like it was gonna happen. We had been playing the level for so long, the end must have been right around the corner. Yep, we got dropped straight into honey. And with the end in our sights, we are forced to make one jump to complete the level, disqualifying it and crushing my dreams at the same time. So next up is Webbed Woods. And with how hard this level is casually, I had no hopes of completing this one. So we start off the level by making a couple throws up some ledges. We then time a throw on this sword guy and continue on. We then do the same on this clobber, make a jump over a bee, and find Squitter. And this is where I thought the level would be over. Squitter can't move vertically without jumping, and since we can't take advantage of throws or damage jumps, if we come across a gap or ledge, we're screwed. And we come across one right away. After pausing for a bit, I decide to try something. If you hold up and down while shooting a web, you can make it rise or drop. If I rose it enough off the ground where Squitter could walk on it without jumping and still gain height, then I could do that over and over again and gain height infinitely. So I tried it, and it worked. Slowly but surely, I made my way up the ledge, climbing a staircase of webs. And that's what I did for the rest of the level. Anytime I had to gain height, I just used this method and it worked pretty well. It was a little annoying because if you made the web too high, Squitter wouldn't walk on it and just fall to his death. But yeah, with some carefully placed webs, I made my way through the level. And at the end was the most beautiful sight I've ever seen. A cannon barrel. And with that, we had completed Webbed Woods without a single jump, bringing our total to 10. Next up is the Creepy Crow. And while you can do the first part of this fight without jumping, as soon as it's over, you need to jump on these hoods to access the next part of the fight, making it a bust. And with that, we move on to K-Rool's Keep, and the first level, Arctic Abyss. And amazingly, it's a level that's completely underwater. In fact, you play as Unguard for 95% of it. So we go through the entire level without jumping and reach the end, and thankfully you can hit this target pad while underwater, making sure the level stays jumpless, bringing our total to 11. In Windy Well, we make it to the point where you're supposed to be carried up by the wind, but unfortunately we have to jump to actually activate the wind, killing the level instantly. In Castle Crush, I was making some decent progress until I got stopped in my tracks by this guy. No matter what I did, I couldn't get by him. If I stood there, he would throw his hook twice, killing both Kongs. I tried throwing over the hook, but I would always get hit on the rebound. I even tried damage jumping off the hook so I could make it up to this ledge and kill him, but I could never get high enough. So unfortunately, this one's a bust too. I was able to make it halfway through Clapper's Cavern, until I reached this part with the dragonfly. You're supposed to jump on its head and bounce to the seal, but I couldn't reach it with a roll, and a throw just kills it. So I would just fall in the water and get eaten up by Clapper. Unsurprisingly, Chain Link Chamber is stopped right at the start, because the Khans won't grab onto chains when they're thrown. Totsa Tower is also stopped right at the start. I can make it to the Rattly Barrel before the Totsa Goop gets me, but as soon as you become Rattly, it's over, because you have to jump. And you can't complete it without Rattly because this section here. We've now come to the last level in the game, Screech's Sprint. And I really wanted to end this video off with a bang, but it just wasn't meant to be. You can't make it over this gap without losing a Kong, and even if you did, you can't make it over this gap without jumping. And even if you did that, there's vines on the other side, so the level ends right there regardless. And I won't even get into the King K. Rool fight. Trust me when I say this, it's just not possible. So that's where we ended. We were able to beat 11 out of the 41 possible levels and boss fights without jumping. So a quarter of the levels in DKC 2 you can beat without jumping. Our best world was Kremland, with 4 out of the 7 levels beaten without jumping. Our worst, if you don't count the 1 level world of the Flying Croc, was Crazy Kremland, with only 1 out of the 7 levels beaten without jumping. And again, if you don't count the Flying Croc, we were able to beat 1 level in each world without jumping, which is something I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, you can't beat DKC 2 without jumping, but here are the levels you can.